All right.
All right, here we go. Rolling into episode 18 of the High Octane
Yes.
Dads podcast. We're legal, boys. We're
Yeah.
18.
Barely legal.
I saw that. What was the statistic? Said that, most don't make it to episode 20 or something like that. So if nothing else, I'm bound and determined we're making it there.
Oh, yeah. I think it's like 20 or 25, and then the number drops dramatically
Yeah.
and, so on and so forth. But I think, honestly, we have quite enough people interested in still being guests and so forth still that, well, I mean, we could easily, I'd want to say, be in the 30s before we can really have to make a lot of stuff on our own.
Yeah. No, we've got a lot of people interested in coming on, and I think we'll have one for next week for sure, and looking forward to that.
The worst part's the logistics.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you, the Riverside app has made that a ton. I'm confident in telling somebody, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And knowing that we can get them on here, because it's very simple. All they got to do is go download the app or go to it in your web browser, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm literally hooked up. I'll post a behind the scenes thing on our Facebook page, but I'm hooked up to a USB splitter with a webcam and a microphone. But you don't even need that. I mean, my laptop's got a microphone I could use, or if you're using your phone, I think Matt just kind of propped his up, and had the Riverside app open, and he even used the microphone on the phone.
Too.
Yeah. And, I mean, it makes it super easy. And I just send you a link, you click it, and you're in. And so that's...
if you have access to Wi-Fi, it will definitely help.
Yeah. And,
but,
historically...
it's still not bad.
Yeah, and my garage has not always been the best place for Wi-Fi, so I've got a mesh Wi-Fi system that I put in from TP-Link. I ordered off Amazon forever ago, so I ordered a spare, an extra access point. I put it out here a couple weeks ago. That's why I've been recording from the garage now. So much cooler to me to be out here in the garage and with the car in the background for sure. So
yeah, that's much like our setup with the Glow fiber optic we have, and we've got a mesh system, and I've got one of the things out here in the garage, and it definitely helped. I could probably use one more somewhere in the house or whatever, but because I have some issues in the house with certain things, but it's decent out here in the garage.
Yeah, I like this one. It's relatively inexpensive. I think the one that came with 3 of the access points was sub $200 when I bought it on Amazon, which right now, while we're recording this today, is the Amazon Prime deal days, which is what it is. I am an Amazon affiliate. If anybody's really interested, I can definitely help you out in finding a good mesh Wi-Fi, but that's what I do for a living. But yeah, I mean, works really good. And then when you've got an area that's kind of a dead spot, you can just add one more of the little access points and you plug the thing in. I assume if yours is through your provider, you probably just go through them and they probably lease it to you, so much per month, a couple dollars or whatever.
Yeah. And so I have, in the past, I've been back and forth with that with different companies that I've used. For forever, we had Comcast, their high-speed internet, but I got to the point we had some issues, and then I got my own router and my own modem. But then, every so many years, if I'd have issues with them or they get kind of old, and then I've got to buy them again. And then I'm like, do I really want to? So I don't know. So we've got this system now through a different company, and we pay less a month, a little bit faster internet, and we have a better setup with a mesh setup. But, we still have some quirks because it's still relatively new to the area. But it is kind of nice that if I have an issue, I just hey, come get your junk, bring me new junk. So I don't have to worry about it. So that is nice.
Yeah, I would say for most people who don't want to tinker like I do and change their stuff around, those leasing deals, as long as you stay on top of them. If you don't call and say, I need my stuff updated every now and then, they'll let you run that same equipment. You'll end up paying $400 or $500 for something that was a couple $100, right? Over the years. But, as technologies change, back when they went from, I think it's DOCSIS 2 to DOCSIS 3, when, there were the modems could only handle so much speed. And if you didn't upgrade them, you might be paying for the faster speeds, but the modem couldn't even handle it. And I mean, they would generally know that if you leased the equipment, but had you bought your equipment, they wouldn't think to tell you, hey, you've got this modem, you're going to need another one. And so you kind of paid for the extra speed, but you didn't see the benefit of it. One of the best things that came out of COVID, I would say for us, or through those years, not COVID itself, was that our local electric cooperative basically got involved with getting fiber internet to everyone in the county. Because a lot of these kids were stuck at home. They were having to do video assignments for school. And like my old house, we had DSL. When I first moved there, it was 8 meg down. And that was in 2016, I think. So, that was pretty darn slow. Whereas now I've got a gigabit down and up for probably 75% of what I was paying for that 8 meg when I moved out here, just because they decided to go ahead and run fiber everywhere to give all these folks access to much faster internet. And it was,
that's kind of what they did. That's kind of what they did around here. So, I mean, a lot of people still do the cable company, but, I mean, it's basically them or, the Glow Fiber now. And I think Chantel's putting in some fiber optic lines around here. And then Starlink, because we have a lot of areas you can't get to any of that still. So then some people are still doing like hotspotting off their phone. And I mean, we're up in the mountains here.
I found out the other day in South Georgia, after Helene came through, there's some programs out there where you like T-Mobile is giving out free hotspots with like 3 years of service for anybody in the affected areas. Now it has to be, there's some qualifications, like your kids have to be, enrolled in a school where they've got like free lunches or whatever, Title I school, whatever they call it. In order to qualify, because it's, hey, if you've got kids in school, you're going to need internet. So T-Mobile was doing that. So, I mean, shout out to them. It's pretty cool. I think Starlink was giving out a whole bunch of the Starlink setups to people in the affected areas as well. So
that's pretty cool.
Yep. So we're just jawing here. We haven't started talking about cars yet. I've got a little bit of a project update. Have you have you got any for this week?
Not really. I mean, I've got stuff I need to do always, but just trying to, I can, so I'm in process of finally changing jobs, and I'm not gonna go into too much detail on it right now, but where I've been there for about 17 and a half years, and I'm gonna be going to a different field, doing different types of things that I've never done before. So it's definitely going to be a bit more of a change for me, but it's close to home, good money, much
hours
better
are better.
benefits. Yeah, the hours are much better. The benefits will be much better for my family. So we'll see how that goes. But like I said, it is a big change for me from what I'm used to. And so that's interesting. But I've just got so much here at the house I've still got to do. I did get the car inside again, finally, the other week, maybe last weekend. But then we've had so much rain from all the, residuals from the hurricanes. But really just been trying to still clean up. I've got a lot more junk than I thought I had. And I mean, I just really should have rented a dumpster. But with this time off, I have a little bit of time off between jobs here. So I'm going to use a couple of days to maybe either borrow or rent a dump trailer or take Dad's extra pickup and just kind of start chucking stuff and try to do some major clean out and get a little bit done while I have days that everybody's at school and I'm at home.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be nice. Cause I really need to work on the rest of this space, finish this room out. I've got a lot of junk in here that's not going to belong in here. That's just, I piled it in here to get it out of the way while doing stuff. So there's a lot of crap I just need to get rid of still. And we did pressure wash the car when it was outside. At some point, maybe this weekend, because I think we're going to be busy this weekend. But sometime next week or two, I might get the kids out here to clean the car out, because I had one of those Harbor Freight moving blankets in the back. Because in the hatch, I've got boxes full of all brand new suspension and steering components that, like, all Moog parts, and I've got like strut tower little strut bearings, and all sorts of shit, all brand new in the boxes, sitting in the back of the car, and it's been covered up with a moving blanket from Harbor Freight. Well, those break down really, really bad after sitting in the sun for a few months. So there's like thousands of pieces of little blue fabric all over the inside of the car where that blanket is just like broken down and dried out and flew everywhere. So we need to like deep clean the inside of the car really well. So part of me washing it was because I wanted to, it had been sitting outside for a while and I hadn't really done it in many years. So I gave it a good scrub just with Dawn. The paint on the car is like some garbage spray bomb I did when I was in high school. So it's nothing, it's going to all have to be sanded off before the car ever gets painted. But, I opened the hood and hosed everything down. There was like leaves everywhere, tried to pick everything out, got all the dust and mildew off of it. Because I'd like to get it where I can start working on it again, and I really don't want to work on it if it's all nasty and grody. So I want to try to clean it out and just make my life easier as I pull everything out of the car while it's in the garage, that I'm not also making a giant mess around me. So that was my big thing, is I was like, I want to put it inside and I want to start doing something to it, but I want it clean because I don't want to make more of a mess and just I get pissed off and not want to deal with it.
Yeah.
But no,
I get that
just,
for sure.
You know, other than that, like I said, I really haven't had any projects. I've been bebopping around in the Volvo the last couple of weeks. That's been fun since it's running again. But no, you've got
Well,
a big project coming.
If you're like me though, like when you change jobs or there's any level of uncertainty, maybe it's just me, or I mean, not just me. I'm sure a lot of people are this way, but like everything kind of comes to a halt. Like I'm not buying any parts. I'm not doing it. It's like until the dust settles, I've kind of got to take a step back, and make sure that everything's going to kind of work out the way I planned before I start,
right,
resuming everything.
I do have a bunch of junk that I'm going to need to scrap because I put an exhaust system on Dad's truck, like scrap, sell, just to kind of, if I can make a little extra money here and there just to make myself feel better, awesome. But I just need to get junk out of the way. And like you said, I'm not really buying any big parts or anything. I'd rather kind of wait it out and make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
So
I know, like me, I've amassed so many like random parts and things. When I find a deal on something, I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to want to do that. Like I've got literally right here a set of 243s that I picked up at LS Fest for this car that eventually, I'll take them to the machine shop and just get them cleaned and pressure tested. And, I may just take both sets ahead and let them go ahead and move the springs and everything over just while they have them. Just go ahead and do it. But, that'll be a nice addition to get rid of the 317s, go over to the 243s. But yeah, I've got a little bit of a project update for this one in just a moment as soon as I go get my charger. So I'm going to, I don't know if I can pause recording or not.
One.
Oh, nice. Riverside coming in flat. All right. So I've got a couple of project updates on this thing. I posted, I don't know if I posted on our group or not, but posted Mullet Militia, scored a Fast 102 LS6R intake. I think I mentioned that last week. So I got that done, got it on the car, ICT Valley cover on there. So I got the knock sensors out of the way, and seems to be running good. Feels great. And, took the WS6 wheels that I bought when we were up at LS Fest and got a set of Nitto NT 555s.
Woo!
So I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the black wheels on the two-tone with the silver. But so far, kind of sitting with it. I like them. So I'm definitely liking the tire width on the 17x9. So I did find out.
I didn't think about it. I could have set my camera up and I could be aiming this way and I could have my car behind me.
What a loser.
Well. Yeah, that happens.
Did find out, I picked the whole set of wheels up for $200. I can't be really mad at the guy. Did find out 2 of them are bent. So they're going to go and get repaired to get those fixed. I put them on the rear, so maybe it won't be too bad. At least I can get out and, run to the gas station, stuff like that with them. But of course, I still have the Race Stars. Love those wheels, but drag radials everywhere you go. Kind of, not really what I wanted. And I didn't think about it until today when I pulled this thing out of the garage, and I sent you the video, but I got in the driveway and just, stomped it in the driveway. Since I finished the 6.0 swap, even before the 102 intake, before the cam, this car's had drag radials on it from day one. Well, with the swap. So I've never really just stomped it with street tires effectively on the car. So, yeah, that was a little bit of fun, but
It will definitely, it'll make the car feel faster, but not, because you'll be like, oh my God, it's spinning everywhere.
Yep.
And it's like all over the place, but it's just, no traction.
Yep. I've still got to go and fire up HP tuners and actually officially turn the aux sensors off. They're just unhooked right now. And then, make whatever adjustments I have to for the larger throttle body and all. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of just, data logging it and seeing what changes I need to make. But I mean, like I said, just cruising around here, it felt great. I hadn't got it out a whole lot just because we've been, like you were talking about, we've been busy literally every afternoon all last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So, but more importantly, my buddy's going to come over on Saturday. We're going to mess with this thing because I'm tired of it looking like a 4-wheel drive. It's got to come down a little bit. And I think that's going to lead us into, into our main topic for today. And I do want us to, I'm going to say this first because I know a lot of people bail early on, especially in a larger video. I want the podcast to be, entertaining, obviously us chatting, but I always want there to be some sort of educational component. I want people to, be able to take some information away from it, and really get some value from listening. And so, that's where I think it's important for the folks that are listening to kind of chime in, because I know I've got a lot of knowledge about a lot of random stuff. If you want to know about IT, gaming, photography, cars, LS swaps, whatever, like I've got a lot of knowledge, but if you just wait for me to sit here and ramble and get to all of it, it's going to take a long time. But, if somebody says, hey, I want to know about this thing, like I'm all about it and I'd love to tell you all about it. Chris, I think you're the same way. Mm-hmm. So we want to hear in the comments, on the Facebook page, everywhere, like what is it that would be beneficial for you to hear? What things do you want to know more about? And then we'll make sure, we talk about that stuff. But I think today we're going to talk about lowering the car, because I put new, the KYB shocks and struts on here when I had it apart last time. But the springs are the stock height. I did do the isolator delete on the rear, so it's just got heater hose around that top coil of the spring. But as of right now, come this weekend, the plan is to take it out and start cutting them a quarter turn at a time until the car sits like I want it to. And I know there's a lot that goes into that, like we were talking about, and how you kind of cut the springs, making sure you do it the right way. Removing the front springs safely is why, honestly, I've not done it yet, because I don't have the spring compressor tool. And then, you see some videos, people just,
you don't need them,
tie them up with chain and all of that. Yeah. So I knew you would know the trick. So that's what we're going to talk about today is, and love to hear in the comments, like, did you guys, when you lowered your car, did you order a set of lowering springs? You cut the springs you had? All the drag racers that I know have all said, just cut the springs. What are you worried about? Like, why go and buy a set of springs for the car? So yeah, just curious, Chris, what your thoughts are there.
So that's the one big thing is it gets a really bad rap for cutting springs. People on the internet flip out, whatever. But over the years, there's been a lot of people that cut springs. There's more than just, hey, I'm going to chop this spring. You got to kind of know, like, spring rates, the type of spring, how are the suspension set up. Like those cars have a McPherson strut, and then the springs just ride, in their A-arms into the body. But, like, I know people would cut Hondas and stuff, and they'd get real bouncy. And if you cut, typically you cut, I don't know what the math is. I know somebody smarter than me does, but, there's like the diameter of the spring, how many times it's wound, and all sorts of stuff to figure out the spring weights. But you cut everything you cut off, you make it shorter, the resistance goes up. So that's another thing you have to look at. And like I said, overall spring heights. So when I did my Camaro several years ago, I wanted a certain spring rate, and I wanted the car to sit at a certain height. I did a lot of research, and I ended up buying new springs. And yeah, I could have bought, what do you call it? Like quick jacks or something like that. Or what is it? Quick jacks, weight jacks.
Okay.
But I was on a budget, and you know, did my research, and I bought brand new springs, so I knew, you know, they haven't been heated or something, because that's when you don't want to heat them a ton, because then that will change everything. You know, they're already heat treated to a certain, you know, whatever they need to be to a certain spec, so you want to minimize how much heat you put in them. Well, that's where a lot of the bad rap comes from, because like the old school people, they would load lower trucks and cars. I had an older guy tell me one time, he's like, "Oh, you need to lower that thing. You just slide a cinder block underneath the front bumper and then heat up the springs till it drops." And well, then you create a weak spot in the spring. So that's not something you want to do. But when I've done them, sometimes I might have gone a little slow, where I'd take like a Sawzall or a cut-off wheel, and I'd cut a little bit on one and then go to the other one, cut a little bit. So that way I'm not overheating the spring. But I know for those cars, typically like a half to a hole in the front, and 1.5 to 2.5 in the rear will kind of get you where you want. There is the safety thing we were talking about. We'll have to, I know Matt and quite a few other ones will probably agree with me that that's the way to take the spring out in those cars, is you just put a chain through the middle of the A-arm and the spring, and just, give a little bit of slack, take everything apart, slowly drop the A-arm down, and then some of them, the springs will just fall out. But you have that chain there. If it pops, it catches it. Or I've had to back up behind them and like smack them, and then they just, boom, they jump out.
Yeah.
So
the spring's up through the hole in the center of the chain is up through the hole in the center of the A-arm, and then through 2 or 3 of the coils of the spring, just so it can't go anywhere.
Right. Yeah, it's once you get in there and look at it, it's not bad. The worst part is putting the spring back in, because basically you're like, the way I had to do it was like sit on the ground like Indian style and like push the spring up in the perch. But then like that's where you need to have somebody else there to like start jacking up the A-arm once you get it to that point. But have a safety chain, because if that thing pops out, it's hitting you in the
yeah.
That's where, like, you get a lot of the shorter springs. I mean, it's not as bad to do, but you've also got to get the tail within the right spot in the A-arm, or the car is going to ride funny. So if there's 2 holes in the A-arm, the end of the spring has to be over top of.
Gotcha.
And if it's not in it right, it's going to sit funny, really funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had the springs out of the back, so I swapped the rear end and swapped the pan hard bar, did the lower control arm relocations. The rear springs are super simple, but the front,
oh yeah,
there's definitely a little more to think about with doing those. So we'll get to that this weekend. Luckily, I will have a second set of hands here. John, the guy with the little Toyota truck that was on the cover last week's episode, the guy I got the intake from, he's gonna ride over Saturday, I think, and we're gonna get out here and mess with it, which it'll be nice to have somebody to get out and wrench with for a while instead of just being out here by myself. So looking forward to that.
I didn't think about it. One thing you need to look at is your rear springs. If they're the cargo springs or whatever they call them, they're like a progressive rate spring. You can't do them. It's got to be a linear rate spring, so that way the spring size isn't changing.
Yeah, I have to look.
Yeah,
for sure.
They're shaped funnier, but it's so I think it's got like a heavier. It's something to do like to where you're able to carry a little bit more load in them, like for the heavier cars or something. So a nicer ride. I don't know. Some 80s bullshit.
Something they thought would help.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the plan this weekend, is get the car lowered. And, I think, if we were to get them out and it's like, well, no, these aren't going to work, I'll just order a set of springs. They're generally not that expensive for a decent set. But that kind of leads into the next thing is, I've done the 6.0 swap in the car, obviously. Now I've done the bigger intake and throttle body. Of course, I've got long tube headers and cam swap and all the supporting stuff for that. the car's making a good deal more power than it ever did in the 80s, or
Oh
even up
yeah.
through the 2000s when I had it. But I'm still running the the stock front brakes. Now, obviously not the stock brakes. I've replaced the calipers and everything, the rotors, but they they're still that same size. And so really, before I do anything else adding power to the car, the next bit of money that'll get spent on it is for sure safety, right? So getting new brakes, really want one of those TBM brake setups like they've got for motion, but I don't think that's in the cards at all. And I mean, it's not strictly like a drag car or anything, but I do think that new brake line they've put out, they're going to be releasing a 3rd gen set for as well. That's
Okay,
not
cool.
quite as expensive as the TBMs, but it's still a performance brake setup. So definitely be looking into one of those. And then, I don't know, I probably won't do much with the rear just because ultimately I want to swap the rear end. And, I'd rather just wait
Right.
until I'm doing that and get like the setup for the 9-inch or 8.8, whatever I end up putting in the rear end. So
Right.
what brakes you got on your car?
Stock 1986 brakes.
Okay.
Yeah. With like Duralast calipers and brake pads. But I'm actually sitting right next to a full LS1 F body front brake swap. But no, I was going to put LS1 front brakes on the car, and I just haven't got that far. I've got the brackets. I just need to modify my extra set of spindles that I have.
I was gonna say, didn't
And
you have to modify the spindle or something to make those work? I remember looking into it, and it was like, well, I could do that, but depending on where I want to go with the car ultimately,
Right.
as Steve would say, all the time, buy once, cry once. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
He's not wrong though, and I do, brakes are something I want to do right. Like going fast is great, stopping is also great when when you're going fast.
So I actually haven't used them yet because I think I'm at a point where I'd much rather do like a Brembo setup. So I was really always wanting the V2 brakes, I guess the six piston Brembos, but really, I mean, I don't really need all that. Honestly, the Brembos, the 4 piston ones off the like a 5th gen Camaro, will probably what I'll go on that car on the front, and then probably do like probably do like the F body rear brakes, 4th gen F body, or a 5th gen rear Brembos. But I got to figure out a rear situation for the car. I don't know if, like you said, buy once, cry once, but I mean, like a $5,000 rear end for a $2,000 car. I mean, kind of,
2000.
I'm not.
Have you seen 3rd gen prices lately? I don't know if it's a $2,000 car anymore, Chris. Everything's crazy.
I mean, I did sell my 92 Camaro 2 years ago with almost 300,000 miles on it for $5,500. I mean,
Wow.
it was a great car.
Oh, I love
I mean,
that car.
it wasn't anything wrong with it, and I've had a lot of nice suspension work into it and all that. But it just baffles me. I'm like, that's a lot of money. But then looking at them, I'm like, wow, maybe I'm just cheap or broke.
I'm both. So,
Yeah.
so you were talking about like doing 4th gen, like LS1 rear brakes, right? So
Right.
I know obviously with the front, you got to modify the spindles. Are the rear brakes a pretty direct replacement, or is there any modification
I
needed for that?
I don't know for sure. I know there's some things you have to do. I know at one time I looked at doing it onto a drum brake rear, and that takes a little bit more modifications. But to be honest, I really haven't looked into it for a while because I really had no desire to put disc brakes on the back of a 10 bolt. I'd rather just buy another junkyard one if I was putting a 10 bolt back in or putting better brakes on it.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that
both of
was
my
like,
cars had drums. I still have drums on this car.
I was gonna, I wanted rear disc, but when I started looking into what it was going to take, I was kind of the same way. I was like, but it's a 10 bolt, and I don't want
Yeah.
to put money into a 10 bolt. And so, luckily Tony Sanchez was selling the 9 bolt, and it was
Right.
already a disc brake setup, and I knew like it was out of a 3rd gen. It's going to bolt right in, which was great. So, and the price was really good. Drove down and picked it up. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into that because I think if I could upgrade them do just LS1 rear brakes and then do a nice brake setup on the front. Got to talking with Kevin about doing a manual brake setup, because when I was putting the new intake on, we were talking about the vacuum ports on the 102, and we were talking about hooking up the brake booster vacuum line, and he was like, why don't you just switch to manual brakes? But, obviously it's not just changing the cylinder, right? It's, then you got new brake lines, you got several things you got to do to kind of support that. And I think there's some modification to the pivot point for the pedal as well that goes into that. So, I'm going to do a little bit more research in that. So as far as being informative,
so what are you trying to do? Have more room or have somewhere to hook stuff up to? I'm confused.
For me, it's honestly just to have all that room and get that massive brake booster out of the engine bay.
I want to say that I think the 4th gen master cylinder, the brake booster is slightly smaller, and I believe I know it works. But I'd say do some research on it. But
I'll look into that. Maybe next episode we'll see what I find with that, because that's interesting too.
I have a 4th gen brake master on my car, and mainly because I had mine go out at a Mullet Militia drag race. I think we talked about that earlier on, but I had lost brakes at the end of the track, but the master cylinder went bad, so I ended up ordering a 4th gen one off of like Rock Auto or something, and I bought like the cheapest one they had because I was broke, and it works fine. It looks much better too. It's got a much better reservoir design, little screw-on caps.
Okay,
it's not like that old school cap or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I gotta say, like, a lot of that, I don't know any benefit for me to go manual brakes other than it's going to look a ton better under the hood, right?
Right.
To not have that big reservoir sitting there and the big brake booster. So, if a 4th gen one will bolt up, that's kind of interesting too. I'll have to look into that.
Gets it for me that I can't stand in the engine bay of those cars. Like, I guess if they're dirty, but is the washer and overflow tanks.
Yeah, those are gone.
So, like, most of them look like shit and they're garbage and they're brown, yellow, whatever. And, they make new ones and you can buy them. They actually look really good. And I like the look of a very stock engine bay with all that in there, but they look really good just with seeing the fenders. So, and also on mine several years ago when I did my swap, I put a 4th gen battery tray overflow tank in it, and I had to cut out a hole for the battery
See,
tray.
I was going to do that, but I just wasn't a fan of.
I'm ready to go back to the stock style setup, so I'm going to eventually order a plate or whatever and cut all that shit out, and I'm just going to get like a cheap aftermarket overflow that I can hide like right next to the radiator, something like that.
So
because I like that.
That's what I've got.
Where it's all open.
Yeah, I've got it's just a little like black aluminum.
Okay.
Or, it's coated black, but like an aluminum overflow can with a screw-on lid. It's maybe like that, it's about like a 1 liter size or whatever. And for me, mine is tucked on the driver's side where the smog pump and all is. It's like just on a L-shaped bracket hanging right there. And it's just kind of tucked out of the way. You don't really notice it's there. I did when I mounted it. I need to redo it eventually, but it's not a huge deal. But like to get the cap off, I have to like bend the bracket a little bit so the cap will clear and then push it. And then once the cap's on, I can push it back and it like slides under the lip because I didn't quite mount it far enough forward. But when you're just standing there looking under the engine bay, it looks fine. And that's been it was a good enough solution at the time because the stock overflow tank was nasty and ugly, and I was like, I don't want to put that thing back in there. Yep. It's going to take. I've done all this work to at least make my stock LS engine look halfway decent, with the ICT coil brackets and other little things. I was like, I don't want to put this big yellow jug back on the fenders. So I definitely like the look of it without them. They make there's some like sheet metal, like polished metal ones too that you can get that go in the factory place, but man, for what they are, they look okay, but they're expensive.
They look nice. They look like most of them look like they're nicely built. I'm just not much on the look.
Yeah.
I'd rather them not be there and everything be kind of cleaned up, or it be like bone stock factory super clean look.
Yeah.
It's so some of that, I guess it's that whole like show car thing, like the really flashy shit. I'm just not a fan. Like chrome, it don't get you home. So
I
you
mean,
know,
I like it, you know, in its place, right? But for me, it's kind of like we talked about last week. Like, I'd rather it be serviceable and I know where everything's at, and not, a lot of times, a lot of the really showy stuff is more than what you need. And I very much like the minimal and functional, right? Like the little catch
right,
can that I got. It's it's
like
about,
black wheels.
hey man,
So all right, we're starting a new topic here.
okay,
Black wheels. That's if it's one thing I hate more than chrome wheels, it's black wheels.
well, do I have the thing for you, sir? 'Cause I
I
got
would
them both.
say I wouldn't say hate, but it depends on the wheel style, depends on the car, and but I'm not a fan of black wheels in most scenarios, because to me they just kind of like disappear and look like you have just big black round things on the car. Which I mean, there's tires, but when you get the black wheel and everything, it's just like everything just kind of blends in, and it's just, to me, it's kind of boring. But I also don't like super flashy, gaudy home wheels. Like
Yeah.
polished aluminum's a little different, but like, I mean, it's not a ton, but I don't know, a lot of it's with the wheel style. Now, I like a lot of the wheels that might be polished or chrome, but then have an accent color, like black or gray. A lot of times I like that much more than just a polished wheel. But like I said, it depends on the wheel style and the car. But
Yeah.
black wheels, all black wheels, typically not a fan of.
Well, I'll say, like, all right, my wife's Durango, right? The only thing that's not black on that is the RT badge. Like,
Right.
and the RT badges on the rear are even blacked out. But the wheels are solid black. It's got dark tint. Like, it's a Durango RT black top edition. Like everything,
Right.
black leather interior. Like, it's completely murdered out, and I love it. But honestly, I'm generally not a fan of black wheels on anything other than an all black vehicle like that.
Right. And to
Um,
me, that makes sense.
yeah, and so I wasn't sure, and I'm still not 100%. So like, if I came across a set of differently colored 17 by 9s that I could move these tires over to, because now I've invested in the tires, right? So, I would, but this was definitely a function over form kind of thing with this. I
Well,
wanted some grippier tires, because the highway that I live on is all windy roads, and I love
yeah, you
driving
wanted a
down it.
more driver friendly wheel and tire setup.
Yeah. And I think it would be really cool to go and find like a little, Kyle Pearson that's in the Mullet Militia.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
not far
Kyle's,
from me.
oh, okay. Kyle's great. We need to
Yeah,
talk to him.
yeah. And the founder lower control arms that are on this car, I got from him, and he'd had them from like when they were like prototyping them or something. And he was like, "Hey, I got these lower control arms if anybody wants them." And I was like, "I'll buy them." And they're just tubular lower control arms, powder coated in red. So then,
Mhm.
sort of side tangent, I waited a very long time for my tubular panhard bar.
Sorry, I had an itch.
That's all right. I waited a very long time for my tubular adjustable panhard bar for the back,
Okay.
because
Baby.
I wanted the red one.
Yeah.
And because I had the red lower control arms, I had the red lower control arm relocation bracket. Side, damn it, I wanted the red panhard bar. And
Right.
it was, during COVID when I ordered that thing, and it was like, the black one, you'll have it in 2 weeks. If you want red, we don't know. And I think it was like 2 months. And
Oh, God.
but I mean, I wasn't doing anything with the car at the time, so it wasn't a huge deal. And just went ahead and waited for it. And I'm glad I did. Putting that thing in, I ended up with a knot on my
Ooh.
forehead the size of a like baseball. Because what it was is I was putting everything in. Well, when I went to put the bolt through, there was something I did. I needed to pull it back out. What, it kind of wedges in there. It's a little tight. I'm sitting there like pulling on it. And when I made the last pull, it came loose and I just went pling and just smacked myself in the forehead with the thing. So I walk in the door and I'm looking at my wife and she's like, "Oh God, what did you do now?" It's like,
Oh, no.
"Sorry, I'm good. It's poking out. It didn't dent my head in. So we're okay."
Yeah.
But it was, it was not fun. And what's crazy is like, it didn't hurt when I did it. That's what got me. It was like, I didn't feel a thing. I just reached up and I felt like this huge knot. So, but to address your point, so I have a question then, because, I've owned an import in my day and I like all sorts of cars. How do you feel about other colored wheels, your bronze and gold and red wheels?
So again, I like them depending on the wheel choice in the car. So I've really looked at getting a bronze set of wheels for the Caprice. I
fully support this, by the way.
Yeah. I really like a lot of like the gray gunmetal colors. So like,
kind of boring, but they look okay.
All black. Yeah. I don't. So, like I said, necessarily not all black wheels, depending on the car. I've been kind of into the gray gunmetal wheels. So I really debated on painting. I had a set of C4 wheels for my Camaro that I had. And I actually had some pictures where I plasti dipped them different colors just to see what I liked. And
weren't good enough with Photoshop, huh?
No, this was like a while ago too. But no, I wasn't. I wasn't paying for that shit. But cheap. Anyway, so they were all painted a bunch of fucked up colors anyway, and like they were painted really badly, and so I ended up having them stripped later. So that's why I didn't care. But I did them. Hey, one was already gunmetal gray. I really liked the way that looked on the car with the white. But then I did one or two of them black. I think one of them might have already been black. And one was like a gray, light gray, like the silver. And then I did a couple of them white. And I tell you what, the white looked badass on that car. With the white car, the white wheels looked very period correct. But, a better setup. Yeah, I could do that. So there's a guy I work with. I know he listens. Old Bryce. He's got a Volkswagen, and he's got cars all black, and he's got like some anodized red wheels on it, and he's got like some of the red stuff on the body. But it's definitely different. You don't see enough of different colored wheels, but I've always kind of been a really big fan of those looks that are like OEM plus, I guess. So something that looks way too out of place, I'm just like, I don't know.
Well, it's like, so Kyle, I mentioned him for two reasons. One is I know he does like some autocross stuff. And so now that I've got a decent wheel and tire on this car and some okay power, like I really would like, I've never done autocross. So it's something I've never been around, other than, I mean, obviously I have watching you now, but I've never been able to go out to like a local event, hang out, or definitely not attempted to run my car. So I definitely would like to, I'd like to learn some, practice, and then give it a shot. And I know he does that. So I'm going to probably just reach out to him, but he's selling, and it sucks because I just bought these up at LS Fest, but he's selling a set of very similar wheels. Pretty sure they're 17x9s, but it's got the Nitto NT01 tires on them.
Mm-hmm.
It was his autocross setup, but they're white.
Mm-hmm. I remember. I know him well. I've got a ton of pictures of his car.
Yeah. So he's got them on Marketplace right now, and I'm like, darn it, because I think he wants like $550 for the set with the tires. Now the tires are not, these are brand new. I paid, I don't know, $800 for the four tires, mounted and balanced, and out the door. But yeah, he's like $550 for the whole set with the tires, and I mean they'd probably be good for a few thousand miles.
How close to you is he?
Oh, I mean like 20 minutes.
Oh shit! I'm over here fangirling. Why aren't y'all working out and lifting weights together? He like power lifts.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, he's he's the
Or
next town over,
was.
I think. I don't know exactly where he lives. I know obviously he's close.
Right.
And we've always said like, well, I've never met him in person.
Okay.
Well,
Well, me neither.
I can't remember. I mean, I guess now I'm wondering, when I bought the lower control arms, did he ship them to me or not? Hell, maybe those
Well,
aren't his lower control arms. I'm gonna have to edit all that out because I don't. But I'm fairly certain they are. But I don't remember if we
no,
met up
you
in
got
person
editing
to get
shit
them.
out. We were leaving all that shit.
Yeah, you're
But
right. So
no,
I don't.
no, Kyle's great. I used to
He's
talk
a
to
good
him
guy.
all the time.
Yeah, he's a good dude. And
All my
again,
internet
it's
friends.
so when I was on that other podcast the other day, that was one of the things they asked me about, was like, what is your advice for somebody that wants to get into cars and all? And I really think probably the most important thing is surrounding yourself with, you know, with cars and the culture and being around people who care about them the way that you do and kind of have similar goals to what you do. It's the reason you and I talk as much as we do about cars and stuff. We're aligned on a lot of things. But I've got a lot of really great local car people, but just being a
Mm-hmm.
dad and all, you know how it is, like trying to find
Oh,
time to
fuck
go
yeah.
hang out with other people.
Yep.
When you've got so many other things on your plate is difficult. And, now I've kind of ran across, from doing this and talking with people, a lot of dads who are into cars. And so we all just kind of get it. And it's like, hey, if we can get together and hang out, cool. If we can't, stop by for 10 minutes. And then, I know you got to go about your day, and trying to be a lot more active and outgoing. Cause I tell
Mm-hmm.
you what, I'm 100% a homebody. Like I could sit in these four walls and work on this car all day and be perfectly
Yep.
happy. But if you're not around other people that are, doing what you're doing, it gets pretty, it
Mm-hmm.
starts to feel pretty pointless.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's what I'm hoping. I was trying to this year, but it just life didn't allow it. But I went to more events, I think, this year than I had for a while, but like car shows and cars and coffees and things of that nature. But um I really want to try to get to more next year, try to keep up on them a little bit better, because this year it's just been kind of a whirlwind and there's a lot of stuff going on constantly. And there's been quite a few that, like, people will text me later in the day, hey, how come you didn't go to Cars and Coffee? I'm like, oh, I completely forgot. What's today? So there's a lot of stuff that I could have gone to this year. Well, I'm sure we still have a few more things. Like, I still have the car stickered up still. Um, my plan was to leave it like that until I guess I switch it to winter mode. But I'm gonna
What's winter?
fabricate the. Well, we don't get a really rough winters where I am, but um, I don't know. I've got the factory PPV wheels. I'm gonna swap back on, and I got to try to get my hubcaps from Joe, and so I want to put my full hubcaps back on. I'm gonna swap the stock mufflers on it, take all the stickers off, give it a good detail before wintertime. And like I said, we don't really get really bad winters, but they do spray shit all over the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to drive the car like that, in that shit. But sometimes you run into roads that haven't been, driven on a ton or whatever. So I like to have the car really clean. So then that way, and like, wax or ceramic, I need to put ceramic coated, honestly, but something on it to kind of help protect it. So that way, when I do rinse it off, everything comes off and not a bunch of extra dirt stuck to the car. And I don't know. I like to do a really good deep clean before winter and then one after winter. So
Yep.
it's just always been kind of my thing.
Well, you could
But
do what I do and just don't drive the car, and then you don't have to worry about it.
I already have one of those that I don't do that with.
Yeah.
I drive that
So
car a lot.
speaking of the ceramic coating, I got I'll have to make some videos when I do it about how poorly I probably apply this stuff. But I was at O'Reilly picking up oil or something, and one day, and on their like clearance rack, they had 5 spray bottles of this like spray bottle ceramic coating. So, and I like Googled it while I was standing there, and they're usually, $10 or $12 a bottle or something like that. It was on their clearance rack for like $2.50 a bottle. I was like, well, I'm taking all of those. We're going to, for better or for worse, we're going to ceramic coat some stuff. We're going to see how it goes. So I got to get out and try that one day for sure.
Right. Like I said, hey, we are not detail guys. We are just, hey, we're going to put this shit on the car. And if it makes it this shit look a little shinier and, kind of protect stuff from sticking to it, great. If we got to do it again in 6 years, great. We'll do it in 12. So,
exactly. You don't have to remind me every 8.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's one thing. Like waxing and stuff like that. I just,
I'll do the spray on stuff.
Yeah. So that's what I do. And I remember doing some of the paste shit years ago. And I'm like, fuck this. We're not doing this. We'll just clean it really well. But when I grew up, we washed cars with a bucket and dish soap. And as, I got older and then, my uncle was like, oh, we don't do that. It messes up the paint. Oh, okay. Whatever. My parents were just, their cars were appliances,
right.
They had certain cars
like our
that they
96 Camry that we had. It took you where you needed to go. And
yeah. And I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. And these people still usually have cars that, that they enjoy, that they like, kind of like from an enthusiast standpoint, but their cars, we kept them clean for the most part, and they maintained them the best they could, and till they couldn't or whatever, they wanted something else, and that's just how they do them. But yeah, I mean, wasn't until I got older, but even now, like I had my car detailed when I first got it because it still had some like sticker goo and stuff all over it, and I'm like, look, I don't have all the equipment. By the time I buy all this shit and then fight it for days of me being pissed, I could have paid somebody a couple $100 and they could have it done in like a weekend. So that's what I did. And so then now I'm at a point I just, hand wash it like twice a year. and then, either the rain washes it or I'll go through the automatic washes every now and then, the touchless automatic wash. I honestly, I'm that guy that'll use the brush sometimes too. I don't care. On certain cars. Not like, I mean, it depends. Like the Caprice, the paint on that thing is pretty beat. I mean, it's nicer than most stuff I've ever had, but it's also not great. It's an old cop car, so
right.
And it's got scratches and stuff in it, and like rub marks in the paint that we can't do anything about. So I'm like, I'm not that, because that's part of the allure for me when I bought the cars, is it wasn't something that is really stupid expensive, and I want to keep it stupid nice, and I can't drive it. And so I'm like, the paint's a little rough here and there. And I'm like, I mean, it's not a big deal. I've scrubbed it with the brush. Now, when you do that, you got to hose that brush out good because, the people up here in Appalachia, they like to clean off their 4-wheelers and mud trucks with them. So,
well, and, so we've been paying a membership. So we've got one of the, where you just pull in, it pulls you through and washes the car. And it's like $30 a month per car. And I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, I could literally hit this thing once a day for $30 a month. So for my truck that's got dents, dings, I mean, it's a truck. I've done that for maybe close to a year now. I did that with Crystal's Durango, but like with hers being all black, right? Like if you really look, like you can see like all the little lines and swirls in that thing where it's been through that automatic car wash. And like, I hate it, but it's incredibly convenient, right?
Oh yeah,
is the thing. And I came out the other day. I don't know if it was the wash or what it was. We drove all the way to almost to Savannah for a marching band competition last Saturday, and I got out of the truck, and there's a spot about that big on the hood of my truck where the paint is just gone. And it's bubbled a little bit next to it. I'm talking, you see metal. Like I don't know how it happened. I don't know if like when they were doing, because they do a brush like over the hood and the front of it.
Right.
I don't know if they bumped it or something, if it was something in the car wash or if something else has hit the truck. Nothing hit it while I was driving it down there. So I don't know what caused it. I'm not going to like blame them. I'm probably going to cancel the membership just in case. Cause at this point now I don't want those high pressure jets like shooting water across the hood and potentially making the problem worse. So, I'm just going to let it be what it is and probably not renew it for now, and then figure out what I'm going to do about fixing my hood. But
So,
it just,
I don't know if it was into that generation of truck or not, but it probably would be. But I'm sure a future guest that we have on could give us more information. But I think it's from,
I'm going to ask.
yeah, that like era. So like my Caprice, my dad's got a 12 Silverado. All the vehicles like in that, like the late 2010s, into the 20 teens. I think they had a lot of issues with the paint lifting. And like my Caprice, if you look on my trunk right below the keyhole, it's got like a big chunk of paint that's missing. And it was like rough feeling for a long time. And I think some of it was my son out there picking at it. But there's other places on the car that you can see where the paint's chipped and it's just like flaking off. And you see like the primer underneath. And my dad's Silverado is doing the same thing.
I guess it's just crazy because it's like right in the middle almost. Well, not in the middle, but like in the middle of one of the sides. It's not like at an edge or anything like that.
No,
But
that's like how my Caprice is. It's like on the back of the deck lid, and it's not on the edge. And my dad's Silverado, it's like on the back of the cab. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think Dad's 2012 had some on the cab, if I remember right. And mine being a 14. Like I said, when you look at it, it's like there's the place where the paint's missing, and you can see through to like metal or primer, right? So it's gray underneath,
right?
And right next to where the edge of the paint that you can still see, you can definitely tell it looks like that part started to bubble a little, like if you were to take, you could flick some more of the paint off, yeah. And like I said, I feel like Friday when I was out there around the truck, I would have noticed it if it was like that. So something happened Saturday that just kind of was the last thing that made it finally come loose. I
know my Suburban, it's got some places on the passenger side doors that the paint's lifting, but that thing was in an accident early in its life, and I'm pretty sure it was repainted at least one other time since then, but it was not painted very well. And so it had places where the paint's kind of lifting. It's got some runs. It's got some really shitty sanding marks in it, but it's a pure workhorse. I don't wash it. I just make sure I clean out all the crap so places won't rust.
Yeah.
And
well, that's another question I'll have for our guests. So this car was painted right before I bought it. Really cheap paint job. The guy painted it up to sell it, and then we got it. And then for my graduation, we ended up having the car painted. The same guy did it, and he cut us a deal because of the terrible job that had been done on it the first go around. But we got better. Because this paint job was put on this car in 2006. So it's held up okay, except for the front of the, on the front of the nose where the ground effects are, the paint's just peeling away.
Yeah.
So I bought some vinyl wrap that's a very, very similar color. And I may try to wrap just the ground effects myself, see if I can make it look halfway decent.
Mm-hmm.
But on the nose, the paint's not peeling, but you can see the spider webbing right there at the, where it comes together, right there at the bend in the very front of the nose. It's just like, and I guess there's like some kind of flex agent or something. And I've always been told about, there's a flex agent that should have been put in the paint. Maybe there wasn't enough or whatever, but nobody's ever really explained it to me. So I'm definitely curious to ask that question. Right. It's on my list for sure when we have somebody that's kind of into paint and body. And then he may know of it. There's a pretty good other podcast. They launched around the same time we did, but they've been doing this for a while. And they post reels like every day or whatever, but it's called like Refinish Media. And they put all of their stuff's about like paint and body and all that stuff. And they usually have some pretty good information. Yeah, they're good guys for sure. Similar to like with the Untitled Car Project podcast. Like I'm learning that while there are a lot of podcasts out there and there are a lot of, different, just in the car scene, right? There's a lot of different podcasts, but everybody's incredibly supportive. It's great. Everybody's sharing knowledge and just trying to, make each other's shows the best that they can be. And that's been incredibly encouraging for me. For sure.
Well, then like the other week we were looking at some of the analytics, and we were looking at like this week and then maybe a couple weeks or a month or two. And it's like, okay, it looks pretty linear. And then I zoomed out to look at from the start of it, and you could see a steady incline. And you were like, okay, that's better.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and we talked about that early on in this episode, right? That a lot of podcasts tend to kind of die off around episode 20, and you look at it and go, okay, for 18 weeks at this point, we've took at least 2 hours a week away from our families to sit down and record. And then, there's editing time, there's time promoting it, there's time posting about the episodes, moving everything over to Spotify, creating graphics, doing all these different things that we do, and then just trying to answer messages and stuff. It takes a lot of your time.
Well, and then like we've been trying to get to more events, and I know I've talked to countless people and handed out stickers, and I mean,
we've handed out a lot more than 109 stickers, but we got 109 subscribers, right? So, I mean, that's where I say, like, it can begin to feel discouraging, but then when you think about, like, nothing is, just a blockbuster hit after a few episodes of just two guys doing something like this. Like, it's, unless you come from a place where you've already got a following, and that following is then moving over to the new venture that you're doing. We're kind of bootstrapping this thing from the start. And we said from the beginning, like, this is, for dads, by dads, guys that like cars and just want to chat. And that really leaves us open to, like, if somebody wants to be on the podcast and they're not like a big time car guy, they can appreciate nice cars, but they've got an interesting story, or they do something really cool for a living and they want to come in and talk about it. Like, let's do it. Like, tell us about it. We'd love to have you on. And so we've got a lot of things and a lot of room to grow. But like you said, when we sit back and really look at where we're at, 109 subscribers last time I checked today on YouTube, but then there's a lot more analytics for Spotify and other stuff. And there's people listening all over the world at this point. Like, no, it's not a lot of people, but just somebody somewhere is listening and enjoying it. And, I had when I went to pick the tires up the other day, John said, "Hey, how's the channel doing?" And I was like, "Oh, it's pretty good, man. We're getting along, just steadily moving things forward." And he goes, "Well," he said, "I listen to him every week." And I was like, "Man, that is awesome." So shout out to John. Appreciate you guys down at the tire shop listening. So I've said before, I've talked about the shop locally that I trust. And I mean, those are the guys. They're just good guys that are trying to make a difference and have a shop that's got a good reputation that isn't ripping people off. So
well, my good friend Mikey stopped by last weekend. All right, excuse me, man. I don't know what you go by these days. I remember we went by Michael, but anyway, Mikey came by, and he usually tries to comment on every post or every video we make. And
that's
he even
huge.
said that, and what he was talking to me, and he's actually in process of actually working on starting a full-time YouTube channel for motorcycles. So I talked with him a little bit, and we might try to have him on in the future. He's, like I said, he's a big motorcycle guy. A lot of fun, really animated, so it'd be a good time. And I told him, I said, we could do it. You can come over here. We can Zoom like this. It'd be a good time.
But I'll tell you, man, like that's a topic that I've had on my list that I want to discuss, but I wanted to get somebody that was sort of into the motorcycle world before we did it, because, like, I've had a motorcycle and it was a ton of fun to ride. I really enjoyed it. I'll probably never buy another one. Yeah. I'd get a dirt bike, ride a dirt bike all day, but just like, I had a couple of close calls, and just being out there on the street, surrounded by, 3,000 and 4,000 pound missiles, and the thing controlling the missile is distracted by a TikTok. It just isn't it wasn't my thing. Like, I enjoyed riding it, but the juice wasn't really worth the squeeze for me. So I think that's definitely a topic for motorcycle guys and car guys. We've all got a love of, it's loud, it's fast. They're cool. I can look at a motorcycle and appreciate the heck out of a build of one. They're amazing machines. I just don't really have much of a desire anymore to be out on the street with, I love you, honey, but out on the street with people like my 16-year-old daughter who may or may not be distracted.
And
we'll take you out. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a discussion we've had around here for years. I've never really been wanting a motorcycle. I always said at one time if I wanted a motorcycle, I'd get like a cruiser or something, and like maybe even like a Honda Shadow. You don't need anything fast, just something to
Don't
ride
buy a
around
Shadow.
on. But I was just saying.
I
But
had a Honda, but I had a Honda. It was a Magna 750, so it was a
yeah.
V4, almost like a sport bike motor
Oh yeah, yeah,
on a cruiser frame. It was the best of both worlds. I loved that bike. It was a lot
yeah.
of fun.
Well, kind of what I'm more interested in would be like I'd like to have a supermoto or like an enduro build.
Yep.
And like honestly, for me, what I really want is a Honda XR 650R to do a supermoto conversion on.
Yep.
So that would be pretty cool. But those are a pretty rowdy, 4-stroke bike. Um, but I'd like to have one of them. I don't need a fast motorcycle, but I do like being able to rip around the option to where I can throw some mud tires on it and go off roading with it. Or if I just want to like, hey, I want to rip around town a little bit, just back and forth to work, every now and
Mm-hmm.
then when I know there's not like high risk drivers.
Yeah. I mean, see, I was riding mine. I would leave. I had a 40-minute, ride to work, up the interstate, and so I would be on the interstate, semis and everything else, and
No,
just for a commute, it was great once I got to work because then on my lunch break I'd go ride all around. But then
mhm.
the getting to and from work, going up down the interstate, and then I think probably what sealed it for me. And we'll talk about this more if we ever get or when we get uh, Mikey or Michael on, is my friend left his Suzuki GSX-R 650 at the house, and he had done a lot of work on it, and it had gotten late, and it's like an hour ride to his house from where I was at, and he was like, "Man, he said if you'll ride my bike up to me, I'll take you back home." So I hopped on that thing, and I was all excited because I'd not ridden a sport bike, so I was like, "This is gonna be awesome." And after about 20 minutes on the interstate, I'm a short guy. Okay, so he's 6 foot, I don't know, 8. I don't know. He's super tall. He could sit there with his hands on the bars, and he's almost sitting upright. When he was sitting on a thing. My short, stubby little T-Rex arms, I had to, even when my hands are just on the throttle and all, I'm almost laid over the tank. So like my lower back is screaming after about 20 minutes. It's basically like a core workout of holding myself up just enough. So finally, I think part of the way of the ride, I realized like, okay, I can keep my hand on the throttle and like take my left hand off. And I'm like sitting up just to get some relief. And I was like, I would never want to have one of these sport bikes, especially riding any more than 10 or 15 minutes. And
Oh
it was
yeah.
just like,
I've
it was a
never,
lot.
like I said, it doesn't. I haven't driven up any of them, but I've sat on them, moving them around a little bit, and I'm like, man, I remember when the Gixxers were a big thing when I was first cruising. When I was in, there was a couple guys that graduated a couple years ahead of us, and all of a sudden everybody was like, oh damn, there's such and such, and they're on a Gixxer. We'd all crowd around and we stand there talking to them, and they get off and be like, Jesus Christ, they're like, this thing looks cool, it sounds cool, but he goes, after 20 minutes of riding, my head's buzzing, my back's
Mm,
hurting. He's like,
yep.
fuck this.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's never looked like a fun time for me.
I think another topic too that we will probably get into the next time when we don't have a guest on. So you've got a new driver, 15, 16 years old, right? So I mentioned my daughter, obviously, and I will say she's a pretty responsible driver. She's the one that, if she's got GPS on, like she keeps her phone in a little mount, kind of where she can't really get to it too much. She's very responsible. I've been very proud of her. So, but it's like letting go and having them go be out there, and they tell you they're going to be responsible, and you sort of trust they are, and then probably most of the time they are. They're careful, as long as they understand the gravity of driving. But just
I
as
was.
oh yeah, we've heard those stories. I actually was, and I'll tell you, that was what I was riding around in. So there wasn't any like, oh, I'm not sure if that was James I saw yesterday. But two, my dad was fire and rescue here in Jones County for 15 years, and he knew every sheriff's deputy. He knew every gray police officer at the time. We were sitting in the house one day, I'll never forget, and the radio went off. He had a police radio in the house, so he could hear fire calls and everything else. And we're sitting there, and he goes, "That's my damn tag number." My sister was out driving the car. So before she got home, he already knew what she'd been pulled over for, who pulled her over, because he'd just been listening to the radio chatter. And she come walking in the door, and he said, "How was your day?" She said, "Oh, it was pretty good." She goes, "Anything happened today?" She's like, "Nope." And she went straight to her room, and he was like, "Okay, that's how we're going to play." Great. So that was a fun little story. So I ended up the only time I've ever gotten a ticket, I was one town over. But as a 17-year-old, I'm like, Dad knows everybody, all the cops. And so, and by then they'd all went digital. He couldn't hear really any of the radio stuff at the time, but man, he was the first person I called as soon as that cop handed me that ticket and pulled off, I was like, I'm calling Dad before he has a chance to know what happened. So when I drove around our little town, yeah, I was locked in because everybody knew him and was going to let him know. And, if he'd gotten word that I was out acting stupid, I wouldn't have had my keys, so.
Oh yeah. I mean, so I like acting stupid in regular cars. It's a lot more fun because you're incognito and you're probably not drawing a lot of attention to yourself. They're probably pretty quiet. And they probably don't make enough power to hurt themselves. That's a lot of fun. So I've had more fun when I was a kid and dumb, stupid, retarded, nobody knows who this is car versus, stuff that I actually care about.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But
well, cool.
I think we're going to cut it off there because we've been rolling along pretty good this time.
Yeah, we'll probably be a little bit over an hour on this one once it gets edited down, but definitely enjoyed the conversation. We'll pick back up. Should have a guest with us next week as long as we can work out scheduling. Again, if you're interested in coming on and being a guest, we're not we're not looking for anything in particular. We just want to hang out, talk stories. If you got cool old car stories, or if you do something cool for a living, or just want to come and chat, we'd love to have you come hang out. So it'd be awesome. I think I'm gonna try to get some folks lined up, that are into different types of racing. I've recently recorded, they're doing like a bonus episode with Untitled Car Project about drifting and kind of how you set the cars up, how drifting is scored. I learned a lot just sitting there talking with Ian and Rob, and Ian does drifting. He's got an LS swapped IS 300, so super cool car. And I learned a lot just talking with them and kind of getting his take on how you set the cars up and, why you do things a certain way. I learned a term I'd never heard before. So these types of cars are what? They're what kind of body car?
F body.
Well, yeah, but they're a unibody, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's another term for unibody.
What's that?
Called a monocoque chassis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'd never heard that. And he was like, yeah, it's a monocoque chassis car. And I was like, so I'm I don't want to feel dumb, so I'm over here Googling it while I'm on the phone with these guys, and I was like, "That's a unibody." So old Southern boy myself was like, "I'd never heard that term before." So, but not just that. I learned a ton hanging out with them and about how they kind of store the drifting. I didn't know there were drift team events where they do 3-4 cars at the time, tandem instead of just the 2 cars, and so I had to go look up some videos of that. We talked a little bit off camera about the crowd-funded racetrack that they opened up in Walla Walla, Washington, called Villains Sports Park. So I want to talk about that some. So there's lots of stuff coming up. So definitely stay tuned. And I think we'll end this one here though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a good evening, folks. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.